Welcome to the House of Truth. Today we're going to talk. We're talk about an area that gets people into all kinds of trouble, and we want to avoid trouble. So that's part of the reason for studying for this study on wisdom in the first place. And in particular, so we're going to talk today about wisdom with women, and mostly King Solomon says, Shalomo says about being wise relationship with women. What to look at, what kind of woman to look out for, what kind of woman to look for, and what to do in certain situations when things are not going so well between not going so well with a man between a man and a woman. And of course, this doesn't just affect the men because it's about the women also. Women need to strive to be the kind of not be careful not to become the kind of woman Solomon warns against. Try to be careful to be the kind of woman he advises men to be, and not to do the destructive things that unwise women do, particularly to their own husbands, that ultimately come back on them. So we're going to begin here in Proverbs chapter 2, verses 16 through 19, where Solomon starts off with his first purpose in writing about this, and giving this advice in the first place. And that advice is this: to deliver you from the strange woman, from the stranger which flatters with her words, which forsakes the guide of her youth and forgets the God of her covenant, the covenant of her God. Sorry. For her house inclines into death, and her paths unto the dead. None that go unto her return again, near take they hold the paths of life. Okay, now, when it's a strange woman, it doesn't mean a woman who's by some cultural norm is not following it and is strange. It means someone that's not your wife. A woman that's a stranger to you, that is, you've not known her because she's not by her being your wife. And notice the first thing about her, and we're going to see this over and over. This is central to the whole thing about this woman, how she operates, is flattering with her words. And we talked, and last week we talked about flattery and how and how we need to watch out for it, because the flatterer's intentions are never good. And remember, flattery is built on praise is built on truth. Someone did a good job, and you tell them you did a good job, and you give them praise, so they'll replicate the good job, and your intentions are pure, and what you're saying is truthful. But flattery may not be truthful, but even if it is, the intentions aren't pure. It's not to get them to encourage them to repeat a good behavior. It's to get something that really isn't legitimately yours. And this is what the stranger, this woman and this man does not know, is really after with her words. And now, next thing I want you to notice, to really draw out to you, is this next verse. We're not talking about here a woman of the world, say a woman that's saying an idol worshiper like a Hindu, or perhaps a Muslim woman or someone like that. Notice this is a woman who, a lot of people in America might say, grew up in the church. Whether they worshiped on the Sabbath or on Sunday, she grew up in this, and her parents guided her in the right way in her youth. But this woman has forsaken that, and she was in covenant with she was in the covenant of her God. Not talking about the Father, but she's forgotten that covenant. So we're not talking about someone outside of our congregations here. We're talking about a woman who's operating inside the congregations. She's in us, but she's not one of us. Just as we're to be in the world and not be part of it, there are people who are in the congregation, in the church, but they're not part of the church. And that's what we're talking about here. She was, and she left it. even though she hasn't left necessarily the congregation per se, she's left off following the covenant of God in the guide of her youth. And all these things she does, if you get involved with this woman, it's just going to bring death. It's inclined to death. It's geared towards bringing death, and the death and getting you off the paths of life. And those paths of life, those things that bring you life. And so Solomon is describing this woman so he can be delivered from her. And he's going to give you some more description of her to help you identify her so you can avoid her more clearly here in Proverbs chapter 5, verse 3 through 6. For the lips of a strange woman drop as a honeycomb, and their mouth is smoother than oil. But their end is as bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword. Her feet go down to death. Her steps take hold on hell. Lest you should ponder the path of life. Her ways are movable, that you cannot know them. Okay, so notice again, it starts with her words. And notice, they're sweet and smooth. And, you know, and she may use expressions like sweetie pie or whatever, you know, honey bun, whatever, you know. Off those words she has, even the little nicknames, little names she may say to the man, or convey something that's sweet. And she sounds sweet in the way, in their tone and everything. And smooth talker. But the end result of listening to that is like wormwood. Wormwood is not only tastes bitter, it's also deadly poisonous. It tastes bad, it will kill you too. You know, she's going to cut you like a two-edged sword. And she is on her, the way she's going is going to lead to death. And she's ultimately going to end up in hell, and she wants you to join her. She's headed that way and is looking for a man to make the trip with her, or men, as the case may be. Unless you should ponder the way of life to get away from her. Her ways are movable. They're always changing, so you don't know what to expect. She's always trying to keep the man off his game, keep intrigue and mystery, and where he just doesn't know exactly what to expect. And often it'll be like a woman I was related to once, and she would say something, and then someone else actually got what she said right and everything, but she'd be like, no, that isn't what you misunderstood. That's not what I said. And she would just change one or two little words and make the whole thing sound completely different, and try to make it look like the person who disagreed with her was all in the wrong, but really they got things right. Because sometimes we recorded it and we actually caught had the recording of what she said. But she was smooth and tried to, and she was always changing the way and these women are always changing the way they do things. So a man's like perplexed, doesn't know what, like, I don't know why she suddenly was all nice to me, and then she was angry the next day or whatever, because she's trying to keep you off your game by changing the rules constantly. Now, it goes on to describe how to identify this woman here in Proverbs chapter 7, in chapter 5, continue on verse 7 and 11. Hear me now, therefore, children, depart not from the words of my mouth. Remove your way far from her, and come not near the door of her house, lest you give your honor to others, and your ears come to the cruel, lest strangers be filled with your wealth, and your labors be in the house of a stranger. You shall mourn at the last when your flesh and your body are consumed. And it goes on. It goes on. We looked at this before, but it goes on to say, and, and you'll hate the fact you didn't listen to the instructions. Solomon's told us how to identify this woman. Now he tells us what to do about her. Run away hard and fast once you identify her. Like Joseph did with Potiphar's wife. It's a trap. Get away from it. Don't even get near the bait. Because if you do, I mean, many a man who is doing well in life is good's been ruined by getting involved in a woman that wasn't his wife. And the honor, perhaps the honor of a position they had, whatever, was given to someone else. And perhaps they're like King David and thing. And the last, we'll talk more about him later. But after everything, the last 18 years of his life were just continually fighting, and the sword did not depart his house, as the word says. Just continual trouble, and misery and problems galore, because he took the bait. Well, in his case, it's the other way around, but we'll discuss that a little bit more. But it's like the same result will happen to King David. In David's case, he didn't entice the woman. He was the instigator. But if the woman had been the instigator, it'd been the same problem. The same result occurs, regardless of who does the instigating. But in this case, Paul knows about that woman is doing the instigating. And look, and this is what the woman's really after: for a stranger to be filled with your wealth. Your labors, the work of your labors being the result of a stranger. It may be herself, it may be, say, her son, someone like that. Take, sue for palimony, whatever the case may be. She's really the strange woman's ultimately often after your wealth or your perceived wealth. And your labors are in the house of a stranger. Someone you don't even know ends up with your stuff. Everything you worked for ends up being enjoyed by someone you don't even know. The woman knows him, perhaps. The woman knows him, and at the end you're mourning, and your flesh, your body are consumed. Of course, if you were involved in adultery, that could be a reference to the fact that, and you were caught with two witnesses, you're killed, and you're killed, and you're killed. But if you're not, you can end up like David, according to one of his psalms. In the words of his psalm, my privy member stinks. He got a venereal disease. His friends couldn't even come close to him, I mean, that's one of the 12 ways God punished him for his iniquity. His flesh and his body were consumed. And his flesh is particularly a reference to the sexual organs in this context. So don't go there. Once now Solomon's identified how to identify a woman that's trying to trap you, what the result of the trap is, and the advice is simple: run away hard and fast, like Joseph did from Potiphar's wife. Now we're going to look at how to avoid 99% of the battle of not being in this trap in the first place. It's just by Solomon doesn't just tell you don't take the bait, he tells you what to do instead. I mean, animals that are hungry, and they're starved enough, even though they may think there's a trap there, they sometimes still take the bait just because they're starved. But when they're not hungry, they're a lot less likely to do it. And it's really the same way with men in general. So this is what Solomon says here in Proverbs chapter 5, verse 15 through 20, to keep you from even considering taking the bait. Make it a lot less likely you're going to take the bait. Drink waters out of your own cistern and running waters out of your own well. Let your fountains be dispersed abroad and rivers of waters in the street. Let them be your own only and not strangers with you. Let your fountain be blessed and rejoice with the mount of with the white of your youth. Let her be as a loving hind in the roe. Let her breast satisfy you at all times, and be ravished always with her love. Why wilt you, my son, be ravished with a strange woman, embraced to the bosom of a stranger? All right, first of all, that first part, that first part's poetic, but waters are drawn out of a cistern, out of a well, which both are basically a hole. You have to, a hole that something has to go down into to reach to get out. But fountains are water coming out of the ground, right? Rivers are coming out. So he's talking here poetically about fluids, about fluids that come out that occur naturally occur during sex. The fluids his wife the woman produces, the well. The fluids the man produces, the fountains, the rivers. And he's saying drink. He's saying figuratively, produce as much as you need. Draw as much of those waters out from that fluid out from the woman. Put as and let as much of that fluid come out of the man as necessary, and do it with joy. With who? The wife of your youth. And mentally, always insert the word stupid after this. Enjoy the wife of your youth. Stupid is what Solomon didn't say it there, but that's my thought. Um, you have a wife. You have a source. You don't need to take the bait if you already have. If you you're gonna have this. You have this wife. There's no reason to go look for someone else. And this word ravished that's here both times. That's here twice. Ravished. That was be trans. That was be trans. Here's the idea of being drunk, drugged, or just generally wowed. Your wife, let your wife wow you, not some other woman. And 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 her breasts are the ones you need to be playing with. You need to be satisfying you. Your wife is lovely, all as she is. It's that's something I saw in the Flintstones when I was a kid, where Barney and Fred were all goo goo or gaga after some movie actress, and Wilma says to Betty, "What's that woman have that I don't have?" And the truthful answer is nothing. Okay, that other woman the world's told you is so much better has nothing that your wife doesn't have. Pretty much all have the same equipment. Make use of the make use of yours. Dance with the one that brung you, as we saw, as we like to say out here, in Oklahoma. You don't need someone else. And wives, if your husband is access to his own cistern, and if his fountain is dispersing abroad, being allowed to disperse abroad, if you wear him out, he ain't gonna have energy for anybody else. which is what Solomon's advising to be done. In Proverbs 18:22, Solomon says this about this wife that's taking care of his needs, so he doesn't even, so that the bait isn't even tempting to him at all. Whosoever finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor of the Lord. Yes, he's found someone to take care of this need, and he's obtaining favor of the Lord. The marriage bed is honorable in all. He's going to his own wife. She is wearing him out with this till he's like, no more, please. And he's got favor from the Lord because he's not going to be sinning against the Lord. He's not going to be committing fornication, which is sex outside of marriage. It includes everything, but in particular, but even having sex with someone that he's not married and she's not married, they're not married to anyone, including each other. That does not obtain favor of the Lord. Having a wife does. A wife is a good thing. So a man can drink from his own cisterns, and his fountain can be dispersed abroad. Now, in 1 Corinthians chapter 7 through 12, chapter 7, verse 2 through 4, Paul summarizes it, expounds upon it this way. Shaul, the Apostle Paul. Nevertheless, to avoid fornication, let every man have his own wife, and let every woman have her own husband. Let the husband render the wife due benevolence, also the wife unto the husband. The wife has not power of her own body, but the husband. Likewise, also the husband has not power of his own body, but the wife. Okay, so what's the purpose? How do we avoid fornication? To avoid it, a man has his own wife, not his neighbor's wife, someone else's wife, not someone that's not his wife. Every woman has her own husband, not her neighbor's husband, not some man that's not married, that's not anyone's husband. She has her own husband. And notice this benevolence is what we're talking about. This drinking from the fountain, this drinking from the well, dispersing of the fountain is due. The husband's not doing his wife a favor by providing her with as much sex as she desires. He owes it to her. They got married. It's part of their covenant. The wife, in likewise, is not doing him some sort of favor. He's not getting lucky with her. She owes him this by virtue of being married. She doesn't have the authority. Power here is not dynamos like dynamo like electrical power, whatever, but exousia, authority. She doesn't have authority of her own body. She doesn't have a right to tell her husband no. And neither does the husband have the right to tell his wife no. Now, some may think it's a little, people, so here's a little talk. It's always, well, men are just always buying women for sex and women, and blah, blah, blah. And no, it's not always that case. And you might think, well, how can a man? Well, sometimes men will not be rendering their wives due benevolence just simply by not being physically available to them. They're off on business trips all the time trying to build up their business. And, they come home. They come home and they come home for a few days. I try to get this taken care of, get off their mind. Go back. The wife may need doesn't mean it was sufficient for their wives. Men, you also don't. You made a covenant to be there. In fact, we went a little further here. Paul would say those who don't do this are liars and thieves. He says, do not defraud one another. Defraud means you steal something through lying. Okay, you get it. You get something that doesn't belong to you through not being honest, and you're not keeping your covenant if you are not taking care of your wife's sexual needs, just as if she's not if she isn't taking care of yours. So to keep men from taking the bait, wives, you need to be wearing them out in the bedroom. Let him as much as he needs, or you need. That's how we keep away. That's how most men. That'll keep most men from ever even getting a place temptation. Someone that's stuffed full can't doesn't no matter how good something looks does not want another bite. Okay, let's continue on in Proverbs chapter 6, verse 24 through 29. Where Solomon's going to give you some more advice about this, but he's going to get a little more specific here about the strange woman. And here's what he says: to keep you from the evil woman, from the flattery of the tongue of a strange woman, lust after beauty of your heart, and let her take you in with her eyelids. For by means of a whorish woman, a man is brought to a piece of bread, and the adulteress will hunt for precious life. Can a man take fire in his bosom, and his clothes not be burned? Can one go upon hot coals, and his feet not be burned? So is he that goes into his neighbor's wife. Whosoever touches her shall not be innocent. Okay. So notice first thing I want you to notice is the evil woman. Any woman that's trying to induce you, entice you, or for that matter, consenting to you, but particularly a woman that's trying to induce you and entice you into having sex with her, who is not your wife, is an evil woman. The Lord God tells us what's good and evil. And he says this woman is evil. You gotta be like, oh, but she's the sweetest woman I know. God says she's evil. And how's this woman you don't know try to induce you, or begins with her words first of all? People always thinks, well, is the way she dressed provocatively or blah blah blah. But really, it starts with her words, flattery, telling you, maybe listening to you and then empathizing and going, and saying things like, well, it's you shouldn't be treated that way, or I wouldn't treat you that way. Come on, honey, I'll make you feel better, etc. And she's put and she's done whatever she can to make herself look beautiful. And if she's targeted you, if you're her mark, she will look at how you look. She'll watch to see how you respond to various looks of other women that you encounter, and try to figure out what you think is beautiful and try to adapt yourself to that. She wants to make the bait look as attractive as possible because she's trying to get you in the trap. And she'll try to take you with her eyelids. And that's why, some women have fake eyelashes that make them look extensively long. And it's the whole idea is to get you is to draw your attention to her eyes. So you're looking straight into her face, distracting you try and get you not to think about the contents of her words, trying to, as I said last week, when you're trying to manipulate someone, you want to move them from facts and logic into feelings and emotions. And she's trying she's trying to draw you in and get your brain disengaged so you won't recognize the trap. And no, she's trying to bring you to a piece of bread. A piece of bread's not very valuable. People are full and hungry. They'll just discard it, just throw it to the side, let the birds have it or whatever. This whorish woman is just after your stuff, after your money. This is what a whore does. She's after your money. She don't care about you, really. And she will keep going, and she is willing to keep going with you and keep it up until you run out of money. So you're brought down to a piece of bread. But worse than her is the adulteress. That woman who's someone else's wife. Because she is after not your money, but your life. So you could say it's your money or your life here. She's after your life. And she will, and with her flattering words, she's going to try to get you to believe that you are going to get away with it. But you're not going to be. If you commit adultery, you're never going to get away with it. Her husband may not catch you ever. It's true. You may not have any witnesses, but God Almighty sees everything. He's the one that caught David with Bathsheba. David pulled it over on everyone till God got involved and told Nathan the prophet, you're not going to be innocent. You're not going to be innocent on Judgment Day either. Make no mistake, your sins will find you out. So this is a special class of strange woman, a woman that's someone else's wife, and she's especially dangerous because she will bring about your death quickly, possibly. And Solomon addresses this some more in Proverbs chapter 6 and verses 30 through 35. Men do not despise a thief if he still to satisfy his soul when he's hungry. But if he be found, he shall restore sevenfold. He shall give all the substance of his house. Whosoever commits adultery with a woman lacks understanding. He that does it destroys his own soul. A wounded dishonor shall get, and his reproach shall not be wiped away. For jealousy is the rage of a man. Therefore he will not spare in the day of vengeance. He will not regard any ransom. Neither will he rest content, though you give him many gifts. I mean, yes, if a man's starving and he steals from someone to eat, even though he's got to pay it back, the man he stole from can have some sympathy for him. He won't despise him because he knows he's starving. It maybe make him pay him back in the form of giving him a job, making him do some sort of labor, and he'll give him food while he's doing that. And maybe give all substance of his house. He may as the Torah says, if he can't pay back, has to become his servant. And everything he has belongs to that, belongs to the guy he stole from. But he's going to be taken care of, and the man doesn't despise him. And if he's a good man, the thief will actually end up better off under this man. But you go drink out of his cistern as well as I say, his wife. You There's going to be no empathy for you, no sympathy. You are going to be despised by him. And what Solomon's saying is here, I mean, and you're destroying your own soul, and you lack total understanding. Because the end result, if it wasn't for the blood, well, that's true for everyone, all of us, but the end result is death. And you're destroying we talk about the fact that you're hating your own body if you fornicate before. We're also destroying your own soul. Your soul destroyed in hell. And you know, if the guy, if the guy, woman's husband finds him, the guy's going to beat him. He's going to try to. He's going to be filled with rage. And honestly, he is going to. He will not spare. If that man's caught, he'll be glad to throw the first rock, and he'll be glad to throw all of them. He will not. He is. I mean, and for his wife as well, perhaps, but particularly this man that committed adultery with his wife, he wants his blood, is what Solomon's saying. And there's nothing you can give him that's going to satisfy him. I don't care how rich you are. You can be 10 times richer than Elon Musk and offer it all to him, and he's not going to be satisfied with it. He's gonna want your blood if you do this. Even if you talked him into taking it, he wouldn't rest content. If you kept giving him things, he wouldn't rest content. You stole something from of great value that cannot be replaced, and he wants you dead for doing it. In Proverbs chapter 9, verse 13 through 18, we start getting some insight about this woman as well, who would do this. This adulterous woman. What's motivating her? Well, here's Psalm's going to give us some insight into that. A foolish woman is clamorous. She is simple and knows nothing. She sits at the door of her house, on a seat in a high place of the city, to call passengers who go right on their ways. Whosoever simple, let him turn in here. For him that wants understanding, she says to him. Stolen wires are sweet, and bread eaten in secret is pleasant. But he knows not that the dead are there, and our guests are in the depths of hell. Okay, she's clamorous. We'll unpack what clamorous means in a little more detail. But basically, she's not content to be at home and take care of her own and take care of her business. The heart of the fool is in the party house. And she's inexperienced. She is also lacks understanding. And because she's this way, she's looking for someone to do this with. She feels her husband may be taking great care of her, but he just isn't as fun as she would like for some reason. She's got in her imagination, in her mind. He's not the funnest guy because his mind's on serious matters. That's why he's got the wealth to take care of her, or whatever. And so she's out there looking for someone else who's stupid and doesn't understand. Now we're talking about here simple. We're talking about people are stupid people attracted to other stupid people. And notice this thing she says. Stolen wires are sweet. That water you've stolen tastes better than water that you haven't. That bread you've eaten in secret is pleasant. As if that same piece of bread They ate it. If you ate it out in the public, it wouldn't taste as good. And of course, she started. And of course, that man who's his wife, who's drinking out of his own well, whose wife is wearing it, is wearing out any desire from him until he is totally just whoa, that's enough. And she's like, whoa. They're both at the stage of whoa, that's enough. Their waters and bread are just as sweet. But her lie is she's enticing him with it's better. If it's better, I mean, look, and she's so enticing him. You don't have to worry about all the things a husband has to provide, except you can just have the benefits without the payment. But the payment is there, and it's his life, as we just discussed. That husband is going to want his blood if he finds out. And God Almighty will find out. And notice, if she may do this frequently and may get away with it for years, but those she did it with are dead. And those who didn't repent and so on and so forth are in hell. So this adulteress is worse than just the strange woman. This woman that's someone else's wife is even a bigger problem, even much worse. And we got to be careful for her, careful to avoid her above all. And she's not necessarily going to let you know she's married. In fact, she may quite act like she's not, may even give you a fake name. So don't get involved with women that aren't your wives. It's the only real way to avoid getting involved with a woman who is married unknowingly. Now, we're going to continue on in Proverbs chapter 7, verses 5 through 12, where Solomon gives us kind of a case study of how this adulterous woman operates. And let's look at the beginning of this, of how this works. And they may keep you from the strange woman, the stranger which flatters their lips. At the window of my house, I looked through my casement. I beheld among the simple ones. I discerned among the youths a man void of understanding. Passing the street near her corner, he went the way to her house. In twilight, in the evening, in the black and night, in the black and dark night. And behold, there met a woman in the attire of a harlot, and subtle of heart. She is loud and stubborn. Her feet abide not in their house. Now she's without, now in the streets, and lies in wait at every corner. Okay, so these instructions that they may keep us from this strange woman. And those again, it starts the woman we don't know that's not our wife that's going to flatter with her words. Her flattery is her number one tool. Now, in Solomon's case, this appears to be something he actually saw. Okay, at least he's painting it that way. And this woman notice this woman has a corner where she's been sitting at, perhaps where she's been lying in wait. And we don't know why this young man has come to her house. Perhaps perhaps he worked at some merchant and just said, after work, could you bring something to me or whatever? And perhaps she talked to him many times on there. But this guy, this simpleton doesn't have any understanding. He's young. Now, but notice he went to her house, and Solomon said, don't get near her doorstep. Don't get near her house. And notice the timing. In twilight, the sun went down. in the evening, and in the dark and black night. So when the sun goes down, he goes there. He goes there, and now it's black and dark. And this woman's dressed in the attire of a harlot. Now, a harlot is a little different than a prostitute or a whore, or just it's a like a prostitute, but they're not trying to get your money as they're trying to get your worship. They're trying to get you to worship their god, like with Baal's, like in the case of Baal Peor. So they're going to be involved with you sexually to get you to draw in their heart. Notice she's subtle of heart. She's gonna be that smooth, sweet talk, and she's not at first gonna just come right out and say what she wants. She's gonna try to draw him with her eyelid, get him out of the place of logic and reason, and over into emotion and feeling, and get his hormones stirred up and all this stuff, so he can't think clearly. And notice this woman. She's loud and stubborn. I mean, in her home, she's loud and she doesn't, and she insists on her own way. And she does not want to stay at home and take care of the things in the house. She's not, she's always, she's in the streets, and she's lying away at the corner. Now, we're not talking about she's outside like the Proverbs 31 woman we talked to before, who's out taking care of legitimate business in the daytime, who has a field and considers it and buys it. So this is not saying all women need to be chained to the stove, or barefoot and pregnant, as people used to say in the Ozarks. They used to hillbillies used to try to keep their women, as they put it, barefoot and pregnant. Barefoot so they couldn't walk too far away from the house because sharp rocks and whatever. So that it's not saying that at all, but it's saying this woman is not. It is her heart is in the house, in the party house, to the house of mourning, to the funeral home. So she's always about, and she's loud, and she wants her own way, and she is stubborn about it. And perhaps her husband's not giving her something she wants, and that's just more fuel for her. Perhaps she wants to get even with him, and this is part of how she's going to do it. And notice she dressed for the occasion. She is wearing something seductive that's revealing part of her and saying, and it says, I'm showing you some, and I'm willing to show you all. But now let's look at her next moves on this young man. Proverbs 7:13 through 20. So she caught him and kissed him, and when the impotent face said to him, I have peace offerings to me. Today I've paid my vows. Therefore I came I forth to meet you, diligent to seek my face, and I have found you. I have decked my beds with tapestry of coverings of tapestry, with carved works, with fine linen of Egypt. I have perfumed my bed with myrrh, aloes, and cinnamon. Come, let us take our fill of love to the morning. Let us solace ourselves with loves. For the good man is not at home. He has gone a long journey. He has taken a bag of money with him and will come home at the day appointed. All right, so her subtle words hadn't worked. So now she just lays all the cards on the table. She grabs him and kisses him. Notice she's initiating all this. And notice what she says with a straight face. Notice this woman again is a woman of the covenant in the congregation. She has her peace offerings with her. She paid her vows. I mean, in the context here of Solomon, she's been to the temple. Perhaps it's even an indication that she made a vow that once her week was over, past her monthly period was over, and she waited the week out. She went there, did a mikvah, and now what she's saying to this young man, that culture is, I am, I am ready and willing and able. I'm at that peak point. I haven't been with my husband in a couple of weeks. And notice all the care she put into this. This is not a case of uh we'll look at some cases where people just do end up without any kind of planning, end up together. It doesn't just happen, as people say, but this woman planned this. She spent the whole day preparing preparing for someone like this, perhaps this particular young man. Someone that was like Joseph, who Potiphar's wife thought was a handsome young homie. She she is she has been preparing all day, and now not going to wow her husband, not going to not him drink from the cisterns and disperse his fountains abroad until, whoa, no, the stranger, she's doing this till morning, keep at it all night long. And that was the good man's, and she assumes he's not going to be back for a while, telling this young man, hey, the coast is clear, we're not going to get caught. And of course, we don't know why this man's gone. He may just value his business more than he does his wife, but he may also have to be gone because he needs to go on this journey to take care of his wife. I mean, he's off to buy something he needs. So he's taking a bag of money with him, or he's going out in some sort of business thing, a venture to go buy and sell and whatever. It's probably to take care of her and to take care of their home. But his availability is not to her. And as I said, men, you are obligated to be available to your wife, not just she is obligated to be available to you. So that may be driving some of it, but she's planned for this. And she sat in a corner looking for someone. And now she got the attention of somebody who's taken the bait. Now, let's continue on about how she operates here in Proverbs chapter 7, verses 21 through 27. With her much fair speech, she caused him to yield. And with the flair of her lips, she forced him. He goes after her straight away as an ox goes to the slaughter, or as a fool to the correction of the stocks. Till a dart strike through his liver, as a bird hastens to the snare, and knows not that it is for his life. Hearken unto me, therefore, O you children, attend to my word, attend to the words of my mouth. Let not your heart decline your ways. Go not astray in her paths. For she has cast down many wounded, yea, many strong men have been slain by her. Her house is the way to hell, going down to the chambers of death. Okay, now this young man here, particularly, her bold action still wasn't enough. I mean, she kissed him. I mean, she grabbed him and kissed him on the mouth. Told her, "Let's go. Let's go out and have sex, and let's be involved in sex. And I got everything ready, and let's do it all night long, and just, I mean, and he's still hesitant. But now she used her greatest weapon, her words. She'll start telling him how much how much a finer and more handsome man she is. What a fine, handsome man she is, and maybe he's never been married or whatever. Like, maybe she'll try to maybe talk to him about. Well, I know you're lonely, and I'm here. I'll be here to listen to you as well. And I wouldn't treat you that way. and and so on and so forth. And you're so fine and good looking, and you deserve the best. And baby, I'm the best, and so on. And eventually, if he stands there and listens to her, it's going to wear him down. I mean, we talked before when you discern the psalmist says, when you discern the talk of foolishness, walk away. Or in this guy's case, he should run away. Hard and fast. This is the last opportunity to escape the trap, but he doesn't. And like an ox goes to goes to the slaughterhouse, not knowing a dart or an arrow. He's gonna be thrust through his liver to kill him, because it's a relatively unprotected path to it, to the underside of the stomach where there wasn't any bones. So that was a common way of killing an ox back in the day. Or that bird, or that fool, that fool is being taken to the stocks to be placed in them and flogged, and and mocked and everything else, perhaps. Or that bird that's going to the trap and it's for its life. He's taken the bait. And the fact is, her husband may find some way to make money, or for whatever reason he could come home early and perhaps does. And in the whole cycle about wanting this young man's blood, it's for his life. And not just this one woman, but this type of woman have killed many. Strong men have been slain by her. They're physically strong, hard bodied, but their minds were not strong. They were not strong in wisdom, so they've been slain. Many men in hell got there from women like this. Many that weren't killed were cast down wounded, perhaps with, as we mentioned before, venereal disease. Her house where this adultery is going to occur is the path to hell. And going down into it is like going down to her is like going down to the morgue. It's like you might as well be signing up, be putting the morgue in a drawer in the morgue as to go down to her bed. But now, now we're talking this adulteress. Now we're talking about how do that woman took some planning and been playing this. We could see, but how do sometimes people they'll say it just happened? Well, they didn't just happen. Everything happens for a reason, and sometimes that reason is you are stupid, which is what Solomon's addressing right here. Chapter 11, Proverbs 11, chapter 22. As a jewel of gold and a swine's snout, so is a fair woman which is without discretion. All right, a jewel of gold's pretty, but it doesn't belong in a swine's snout. Neither does a beautiful woman is a beautiful is a beautiful woman. Is it right to have a beautiful woman without discretion? They don't go together. A fair woman's fair beauty is destroyed by a lack of discretion. Just like that jewel of gold just doesn't look as attractive once it's in a swine's snout. There's a fair woman is attractive once if she has no discretion. And this woman may or may not be married, but we're going to go with the married woman. And women sometimes they have no discretion is a problem. They may not be discreet in how they in their clothing, not dress modestly. That's one level, but it's often a lot more deeper than that. They're not discretion about what they talk about, who they talk to it with, and so on. And sometimes women will talk to other women about things that should be kept between them and their husband. And in the context of adultery, a woman may say to another woman, may say something like, "I wish my husband's gone on my husband's gone on the road all the time, and I get so lonely, and I wish my husband was at home like yours." It may sound, but it goes on, you know, and I, and my husband just doesn't take care of himself right, and your husband is so athletic, is so athletic, and start praising another woman's husband, and this woman will sometimes lack of discretion. The first woman they have discretion telling the second woman this. That second woman has no discretion. She'll tell her husband. Well, later, maybe they get in some sort of disagreement or something. He feels unappreciated by his wife for some reason, and Satan will bring back up to that conversation to him. Yeah, well, that other guy's wife thinks you're great and awesome, and she's a lonely, and you know, I mean, she's desperate and ready, and she really wishes you would come over. And the man does, and maybe the man just meets across this woman. Doesn't even really have to go touch out of his, just maybe say a repairman or something, and he goes over there. And because of this lack of discretion, they ended up doing it. The woman didn't have her bed all laid out and everything, but she was lonely, and he feels unappreciated, and he take now she makes him feel appreciated. Now he's gonna he makes her not feel so lonely. It's all from a lack of discretion. As we talked about keeping wise company, we need to not be talebearers. Only a fool tells everything they know. Some things need to be kept to yourself. And a woman with discretion knows what to keep to herself and what not to. And that's the context here we're really concerned with when it talks about not getting caught in adultery, and of course having discretion about when you address. You don't dress the same way you do meeting your husband at the end of the day, and letting them know playtime's here and I'm ready. You don't dress that way in the office. If you work in an office, you need to use discretion about when you say, about what you say, how you say it, who you say it to, and where you say it. Similar to what when we talked about wisdom and communicating wisely. Part of that's discretion. Now, another lack of discretion area, a case where it leads to people to be like, well, where it wasn't planned ahead of time, but it happened without premeditation, is this one. Proverbs, Solomon covers in Proverbs chapter 23, verse 29 through 35. Who has woe? Who has sorrow? Who has contentions? Who has babbling? Who has wounds without cause? Who has redness of eyes? They that tarry long at wine, they that go to seek mixed wine. Look you not upon the wine when it is red, when it gives its color to the cup, when it moves itself aright. At last it bites like a serpent, stings like an adder. Your eyes shall behold a strange woman, your heart shall other perverse things. Yea, you shall be as he that lies down in the midst of the sea, or he that lies at the top of a mast. They have stricken me, you shall say, and I was not sick. They have beaten me, and I felt it not. When shall I awake? I'll seek it yet again. So Solomon here is, of course, talking about getting drunk. And just to clarify this, when someone moves itself aright, you may have seen people they'll put some like maybe a glass about half wine goblet, say half full, and we'll swirl it. And they're looking to see if it has dregs and stuff in it, little bits of uh, grape particles or whatever that aren't really like if you make tea and there's and you got a little tea bag saying it gets open, there's little bits of tea leaves and you don't want to drink those. That's what they're checking for, right? They're looking for it to move right, move, and there's no sign of any cloudiness or anything. Okay, so no impurities, basically. That's what that's referring to. Now, this is not saying you can never drink wine, but it's saying not to get drunk, not to drink excess wine. I mean, Yeshua turned water to wine. It really was wine. And at the Last Supper, there was wine. However, if you read the text and pay attention, people were not getting drunk. I went to a Seder before, and the guy drank 4 large goblets of wine. And they're like, well, they had the 4, they traditionally have 4 cups, and they had them at the last, and Yeshua had them at the Last Supper, or at least 3 of them, okay? But read the text. He drank out of the cup and passed it. When it was done, they had 3 or 4 sips of wine apiece. Not 3, I don't know how big the cups were, but let's just pretend it was a 13-ounce cup. They all had 4 ounces, half a cup when they were done. Not 64, not 4 8-ounce cups or larger. They didn't drink a quart of wine apiece. That's what Solomon's talking about here. The party house, and often it's you've got wine there, and now because people are drunk, they end up this thing about lying down in the midst of the sea, or no, he wakes up and doesn't even know how he got there, and he has a hangover. They've stricken me. He feels sick. He feels like he feels all sick and everything. He actually has not caught anything. And perhaps he got in a fight. I knew a guy who got drunk and slammed his fist hard into a wall, a brick wall. He was angry. And I don't know, he had his hand all taped up for a while. And he may have broke some fingers, but at the time he didn't feel anything when he hit it. But when he got sober, he felt it day after day. They didn't feel the time he did it. And the thing about people like this, when they get hooked on this, they become alcoholics. They'll seek it again. Well, during the process of all that, their eyes can see a strange woman, a woman they don't even know. And that woman doesn't know him. In his heart perverse others perverse things. Like I'm gonna go get her. That this woman's not his wife. Now some always think, well, it matters what him and her did. No, it doesn't. It's what's perverse is what's straight and narrow and right. And God, anything away from that is perverse. According as when the biblical says perverse, you've gone off the accepted path. His heart's uttering, he's not married to this woman. Me and her, I want that woman. Me and her and that woman can be the same way. And there's been people who don't even like each other, men and women, who don't even like each other, get drunk, wake up in bed next to each other, don't know what they did. They're pretty sure since they're naked, that sex was involved somehow. Now, with them, someone would say, well, it just happened. Yes, because they were stupid and got drunk. But the curse does not come without a cause. It doesn't just happen. People have done one of these, have either not used discretion, in general, or didn't use it with alcohol and got drunk, or taking drugs will give you the same effect. So that so in all cases so it's a lack of judgment, and alcohol impairs your judgment. So you'll do things you wouldn't do otherwise, like hit a brick wall with your and break your fingers, or have sex with a woman you can't normally stand to be around. Okay, now in Proverbs chapter 30, 18 through 20, Solomon Shalomo finishes his discussion on this whole idea of it just happened. There are three things that are too wonderful for me, for which I know not. The way of an eagle in the air, the way of a serpent upon a rock, the way of a ship in the midst of the sea, the way of a man with a maid. Such is the way of an adulterous woman. She wipes her mouth and says, I've done no wickedness. All right, Solomon's wisdom, science wasn't there yet. He didn't understand. He didn't. He could see the flap of the wings, but he couldn't see how the eagle could just keep staying up there, and he didn't, updrafts and all. How the eagle was able to fly. How the eagle was able to just keep flying so high. I saw some bald eagles a couple of years ago at my house. They weren't too high up, and they just went so high that eventually you couldn't even see them. Solomon says like, well, how can that be? And again, it's kind of mysterious, particularly before we were able to go up to the atmosphere with balloons or whatever, and determine, really understand that there were updrafts up there. The way of serving upon a rock. Not only, as the stomach muscles moving, you see how many legs or whatever, it gets on the rock, how they move around in general, but the fact the snake can lay out there on a rock exposed to something like an eagle and not get picked off by a predator or anything. And then just lay there, or they lay there coiled up very still for a long time, waiting for prey. And who knows what's going on in the mind of the snake while it's doing that. The way of a ship in the midst of the sea. Now, we started talking about like today where we have a ship that's powered by diesel or something, or nuclear powered sub or something, nuclear powered ship like an aircraft carrier or something like that. He's talking about wind powered ships back in his day. The ship's out there sailing. He knows the wind's got the sails and it's blowing it, but you don't know where it's going. You constantly have to adjust those sails. You don't know what the wind's going to do. People have gotten where the doldrums is called. People sometimes use that about being depressed. And what it is, you get out there in the middle of the ocean and the wind quits blowing. And that's why you see on Viking ships, they had a second power source of oars. And sometimes the Roman ships did this as well. I guess the Vikings got from the Romans, where you have the second source of power, oars, because the wind can just stop blowing. If you don't have that, you can end up in like they call them the horse latitudes, where to lighten a ship in the tropics in the New World, when they're going to the New World to and from, the wind would just stop blowing for days, and they'd have to throw horses overseas over the sides of the ship to lighten the ship in the hopes of getting it to move, or at least just because they needed to keep from sinking or whatever. And maybe they had to eat the horses as well. So he doesn't, so there's no predicting. It's unpredictable is the thing about all three of these. The way of the eagle, none of these, they perhaps even understand. There's no predicting where the eagle is going to go. That serpent on the rock, you don't even know when you're going to find one. They will not. So a lot of times they do not appear on the same rock all the time or something. And if they do, then why are they not being picked off? And the way of a man with a maid, a young man with a woman is can get Twitter pated, as my father-in-law used to say. He's flooded with hormones and neurotransmitters. His brain is on self-produced drugs. He cannot think clearly. And so this is the way of an adulterous woman. She commits adultery and then she acts like she did nothing wrong. She eats, commits the adultery, wipes her mouth, cleans up afterwards, and I didn't do anything wrong. Nothing wrong. And she's just like, it just happened. And Solomon just cannot understand how she can be so stupid. That's what the real mystery to him is. Just how can she be so stupid as to think, no big deal? Well, it is a huge deal that can lead to her death, the death of whoever she commits adultery with, and end up her and their lover or lovers in hell. Now Solomon starts addressing another problem. King Malach Shalomo, King Solomon, our purveyor of wisdom. And this is a problem inside of a house, not a case of adultery or men having sex with women they're not married to, and women not having sex with men they're not married to, perhaps unmarried, not fornication, not adultery. This is inside the house itself, between a man and his wife, some of these problems. And here's the first thing we read in Proverbs chapter 12, verse 4. A virtuous woman is a crown to her husband, but she that makes ashamed is as rottenness in his bones. Of course, the first layer of virtuousness is not being a woman that's not an adulteress, who's keeping herself pure to her husband and is taking care of him, who's never giving him, who's making him not even interested, because he is being well taken care of at home. And a woman that makes shame, of course, is an adulterous woman. Obviously, she would do this. And notice it affects his health. It's his rottenness in his bones, which is also said about envy. That jealousy, it's going to wreck his health. But it's not limited just to those things. That's just the uppermost level, but there's many layers to this, or layers, I should say. The top and most obvious layer, but it's not the only layer. There's many layers to this. A virtuous woman does good to her husband in every way, but a woman can make her husband ashamed in many ways, besides just through adultery. She can have a lack of discretion about things besides things that lead to adultery, as I talked about before. Perhaps he does something she finds humorous and funny that he's embarrassed about, and she tells other people, and now people are laughing at him. And it makes him, it brings shame to him. She should be trying to protect how he looks in the eyes of other men, particularly other men, all the time. And that means not talking to her girlfriends about it, because one of them will talk to their husband or someone. And then we'll get back to her husband as surely as the cursing of king will get back to the king, as we saw about wise company, why you don't want to be involved people who are out there trying to overthrow the government. Word of your involvement will get around, if there comes anything about that. Same thing. She needs to have discretion. That's a big part of keeping them away from shame, not just with her actions, not just as far as things that might lead to adultery, but in every area. In Proverbs 14, 1 through, she also must make sure she doesn't talk bad about her husband. Her husband, if she goes around telling everyone how lazy he is and no good and blah, 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 she may think she's shaming him into action, but she's not. She's just wrecking his health, which makes which make him is going to make him label to do less. It's going to make her think. It's going to make him look like he's lazier to her. It's just a vicious cycle. You're going to wreck his health. Be careful. You only say things to build him up and not to tear him down. And men, that's the kind of woman you're looking for. Not one that flatters you, but praises you. Because praise is built on the truth, and it's based on building you up, not trying to get something from you that you don't legitimately owe. Now in Proverbs 14:1, we read this: every wise woman builds her house, but the foolish plucks it down with her hands. That virtuous woman's building her house, and that may mean literal. My wife has a friend, this wise woman. Now, she has a medical condition that causes her joints to hurt and her muscles to hurt, I guess, and stuff. She has two children with severe, she has fibromyalgia. She has two children with severe autism. Yet she literally started building her house. Her house needed some repairs. Her husband was working, made enough money, but he worked a lot, and he had to take care of other things, vehicles and stuff. And she took classes, learned how to do electrical work and stuff, and started literally building her house. She was a wise woman. And honestly, she had more legitimate reasons to not be able to do this than most women. But she made a conscious decision to get off the couch and do something about it. Instead of just telling her husband, who she could see he was doing the best he could. But a foolish woman plucks it down with her own house. A house has to be maintained. And first of all, a foolish woman doesn't do what this other woman I talked about does. She doesn't learn how to do it herself, and she doesn't go do it. But it can be worse than that. She can literally pluck it down. She doesn't I don't got the whatever to fix something, but she'll have no problem breaking something. And some women have trouble with anger, just like some men that will break something in a fit of anger. But sometimes it's just she's got this idea in her head: if I destroy this thing, then my husband will have to replace it with what I want. And oftentimes she's foolish, and it's just not true. The guy, he probably would have replaced it if he could have already. If no other reason, just to get some peace from her. So or because she's been destroyed, because the not using discretion except she's been destroyed, because she's been bringing shame to her husband, destroying his ability, his health. Now he doesn't have the energy, literally, not because he's lazy, because his health's deteriorated, to take care of these things she thinks that she's going to take care of. And maybe she doesn't pluck it down by destroying anything, but he just can't keep up with the maintenance that's necessary. Either way, it's as if she destroyed it with her own hands. Men, you do not want a wife like that, and women, you don't want to be a wife like that. And in Proverbs chapter 19, verse 13 through 14, we read this: a foolish son is the calamity of his father, and the contentions of a wife are as a continual dropping. How's the riches of the inheritance of the fathers, and a prudent wife is from the Lord. Okay, house and riches are from the fathers. Good fathers leave these things for their children. And house not just literally mean a physical building, but a good name and everything. Even today, like world, they said the king in Kings of England, the House of Tudor, the House of Stuart. They didn't mean there was a building called House Tudor and Stuart or whatever, but the dynasty that came from that line, and like, so it's a good name that comes with that, and all it comes in riches. But a foolish son's a calamity of his father. A foolish son's always going to be bailed out and whatever, and causes his father all kinds of grief. Well, a contentions of a wife are even worse. And the interesting about the word contention, contentious, is a root word is content. And the people are contentious in contention, have contentions or contentious, are anything but content. This woman who's always complaining is like continual dropping, like a leaky roof. And notice she is opposed to the woman that came from the Lord. And often, men, if your wife is like this, it may be your fault because you didn't consult the Lord before you married her. A wife that's from the Lord is a prudent wife. This wife that's contentious is not from the Lord. And women, if you're acting like this, if you're not content, the Bible says, having food, clothing, and shelter, be content. If your husband's providing food, clothing, and shelter, and I would add for marriage, because specifically spelled in the Torah, marital right, sex, that is to say, sex. If he's providing those things, and you're not content, you're the problem. Because the word of God literally commands you to be content. And that is not, and that discontent you have is not from the Lord. And I talked about this before, the danger of discontentment. But a prudent wife is content with those things, and she's from the Lord. And many of you are not married and are marriable, not meaning you don't have a wife you divorced from for a reason besides sexual immorality that you need to reconcile with and get back together with. But you've never been married, whatever. You need to be seeking the Lord about who to marry, not being led by your eyes. Remember, that evil woman was dressed beautifully, dressed like a harlot, was doing all those things that appeal to the eyes, appeal to the flesh, and speaking those flattering words, speaking that's appealing to the pride of life, those things of the world, because that's all the world has: the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. The wife you really won't, may not appeal to any of those things. But the Lord knows who she is. She knows who's going to do you good all the days of your life and never do you bad, like the Proverbs 31 woman. The one who's going to build up your name and cause others to, you're going to be praised in the gates because of your wife. Nothing else are going to think, you picked a good one like that, you must really know something. If she's even the only smart decision you ever make, you're going to get credit for it. But you don't get it. You don't find her by yourself. You find her from the Lord. So stop letting the world tell you what makes a good woman and listen to what the Lord has to say. Read his word. That's why Solomon's giving us advice what to look for. Look for a woman with those qualities and pray and ask God, because everyone has things that aren't brought out secret. Sometimes even for themselves, they perhaps behave a way that they don't want to. They don't know why they do it. But the Lord knows the heart as well. And ask him for a prudent wife. A wife that's not, because otherwise you end up with someone that's complaining all the time. And it's going to drive you nuts. Matter of fact, this is And this is how bad it can get, and what Solomon says to do about it when your wife is like that. He gives you some advice what you have to do about it. It is better to dwell in the corner of a housetop than with a brawling woman in a wide house. Now, my father-in-law literally had this situation going on. I mean, we say about someone brawling on, someone's fighting all the time. And people talk about man caves, but he took this to a whole new level. He had made the ground wasn't level. He had a trailer house. He made a rock extension so the trailer could sit level. And he took out some of those rocks at the end of it, it made an opening it was like a cave. They had a door that we could shut it, and the inside looked and felt kind of like a cave. And he had in there a little hot plate to cook food, a television, so you go down there and watch TV and watch football without his wife bothering him. And anytime she would start fighting with him, he would just go down into his man cave. It was a corner of it, not of his housetop in this case, because these were flat roofs, but out there with that he grew under his house in this case. It was a literal man cave. Well, I gotta have some peace in there. And this time, I like when I lived in Greece, these flat roofs. Go over there, you're better off to go get in a corner, put a little tent up, and be there than really being in the main house with your wife that's brawling. And that could also, a brawling woman could also apply to your mother or someone like that, by the way, as well. I mean, maybe you're not married, but maybe you're still a brawling woman in the house. You're better off to go find a corner of it away from her, up in the attic, whatever it takes to be there. Because being in the house of a woman who's always wanting to fight, who's just in fighting mode all the time, or at least while she's in fighting mode. Like when fire lost, calm down, whatever. He watches game, whatever. Go back in. When the fighting started again, back to the man cave he went. Now, in Proverbs 21:19, Solomon goes even, you may have to take it even further than the man cave. He's down in Proverbs 21, verse 19. It is better to dwell in the wilderness with a contentious and an angry woman. Okay, the wilderness, and not necessarily a nice little. I mean, in the context of where Solomon lived, that wasn't a nice little chalet out in the mountains by the lake, He's talking about really the desert, It's hot, it's dry, it's hot, it's dry. Maybe not a lot to look at, but find yourself a source of water, a little brook or wherever, like Elijah, and living out there is better than living with a woman that's contentious, never content, complains all the time, and angry. And if moving to the man cave like my father-in-law did, is not sufficient, you may need to literally leave the house. You're not separating from her to divorce her if it's your wife. But you are moving away from her for a while. Maybe make her figure out how valuable you are by not being around. Just saying, people don't know what they got till it's gone. And sometimes that's true. And giving her some time and space to work through her discontentment and anger. And and you may. I had an uncle who's got this way, and basically he went off. He would come home for conjugal visits with his wife to fill his marital duties. Because she, when she started being discontent, angry again, back out, back out to the woods or whatever, huh? And I know a guy. I was he was asking me about this, and I told him this, and he went out in the summer when it was hot, lived in his car for a week or however long it was. Drove off, lived in his car. So his wife made an effort to quit being contentious, complaining all the time, being angry. Because that is what Solomon is telling you to do. And remember, these are not just Solomon's words, they're the words of God. This is wisdom. And what if you do that, what that woman does at the house is on her. If she acts stupid and does something, it's on her head. You were obeying the commandments of God. Because his commandment is for you to go out in the wilderness, not stay there with her in that house. And here's why. Proverbs 27, verse 15 through 16. The continual dropping in a very rainy day and a contentious woman are alike. He that hides the wind, hides the wind in the ointment of his right hand, which bewrays itself, which means we'd say today, gives itself away. That's what it means to give away, bewrays. Gives itself away. This woman is wrecking your health. There's no hiding this. Other men, particularly been in a situation, will definitely know. You can't. You can try to put on a fake smile. You can do whatever, but it's gonna affect you. It's gonna affect your health because it's ongoing, like continual dropping on a very rainy day. You've been raining all day, and you hear it dripping off your roof, or if you have a leak, it seems like if you ever had a roof that leaked, and it's a rainy day, very rainy day, where it's just raining, maybe not super hard, but raining continually. That's what a contentious woman is like. This woman is not content. She's going to nag and complain all day long, day and night. You're not getting sleep. It's going to wreck your health, and it can even drive a man mad to the point where he comes home and shoots her. Maybe shoots his family, and then shoots himself. Going off in the wilderness is much better than that. Then get to that point. And women, if you're this contentious woman who's not content, who's complaining all the time, who's not, and you know what? Sometimes, and those words you said, there may be some truth to them. And sometimes your husband may have been a little bit lazy, but now because your words and you've made him feel like there's no point, he's even made him lazier. And what you're doing is not working. And anyone who keeps doing something that's not working is just stupid. Okay? What, your discontent is ultimately not with your husband, but with God himself. God's the one who said, having food, clothing, and shelter, be content. And the marital right if you're married. And you think what God has given you is not good enough. And you're taking it out on your husband. Yeah, you need to quit doing that to your husband and repent, but you need to repent before Almighty God first. Because your discontentment is really with him. And it's unjust always, because God is just in all his ways. Often, if you dig into it, the things you're complaining about are you reaping what you sowed, and God's letting you do it. And it's not unjust of him a bit. But he's also the one that can fix your problem. And your ultimate source of contentment has to be God, has to be Messiah, Yeshua. Because there's always be something to be discontent about. and quit listening to sources of people that are trying to stir up discontentment, like we talked about with Wise Company, which may not be people in your room, but it may be people on your television or on the internet. Quit listening to people who tell you what you have. You're a loser because you don't have our product, and you got to have our product to quit being a loser. They do not care about you. They are only trying to stir up discontentment with you to get money from your husband through you, or from you if you have your own money, get your money. Because you can drive your husband to the point you can wreck his health and even his mental health until he comes home and shoots everybody. And everyone can see that his wife is treating him that way. He may be in denial, you may be in denial, but it's evident to everyone else. And it's bringing shame to you as well as him. Okay, now we're going to wrap up Solomon. Solomon's going to kind of summarize here for his advice here about avoiding looking for that good wife from the Lord and being with her and dancing the one that brought you, and avoiding everyone else. Don't be having sex with the women out before marriage. Don't be having sex while you're married to someone else. And if you are married, drink out of your well as much as you need. And let your fountain disperse as often as it needs to. And if you're a woman, same sort of thing. You take care of your man. Your man, no one else's. And even if you're married to a Nabal, who Abigail certainly would have had someone to complain about this, and she didn't. She looked out for Nabal's good the whole time, delivered her from David's wrath. She was noted for being wise and beautiful. That's who you want to be. And Solomon says this begins with your words. Notice in Proverbs 22, 14. The mouth, chapter 22, let's say verse 14. The mouth of a strange woman is a deep pit. He is abhorred of the Lord shall fall therein. Notice it's a deep pit, like a trap. And you're going to trap, if you're trying to trap, let's say, a bear, you don't want to dig a pit that's 3 feet deep and climb back out of it. Her mouth's a deep pit. And who's going to fall for this? Those that are abhorred of the Lord. I mean, that's a scary thought. That you're abhorred of the Lord if you fall into this pit. It's those who don't know God who fall into this pit. If you fall into this pit, you need the Lord to help you get it out. And you need to repent so you're not abhorred by him anymore. And not, again, the idea is you can't get yourself out of this. Her mouth is digging a pit for you to fall into that you cannot escape yourself. Proverbs chapter 23, verse 27 through 28. For a whore is a deep ditch, and a strange woman is a narrow pit. She lies in wait as for prey, and increase the transgressors among men. Okay, notice talking about the whore is a deep ditch. And, and a ditch, is long and narrow. Tends to be long and narrow and has some depth to it. And it does look like the part of female anatomy, the place where she's trying to get you to go into looks like a ditch. But it's a deep ditch, a ditch that she doesn't intend you to get out of. Because remember, the whore's out to bring you down to a piece of bread. She wants you addicted to her ditch, so that you will keep giving her money and gifts till you've got no more to give. And that strange woman is a narrow pit. And again, once you get past the ditch phase, the tube that leads into the womb is shaped like a pit, a narrow pit. Sorry, I said a deep pit, a narrow pit. And it's like a well, like something once in a while you hear about a child, something falls in an old well that was covered up. And they have to go rescue them or something. The thing is, when you're when this pit's narrow like that, you can get stuck in it. You can not just fall to the bottom like the deep one, but you can fall partway down and get stuck, making it even harder to rescue you out. And this strange woman, she is like that narrow pit where something's holding on to you. And you'll find yourself thinking about her. You know, she wants to get in your mind, not just wanting your body in her occasionally, but she wants to be in your. She wants you enthralled with her in your mind and in your heart, where you cannot escape, or where you are stuck like someone stuck in a pit. And you may not even be the only man. She may. There's with a multitude of men. She may be like that woman we saw, that adulterous woman that lays in wait for prey on the corner, like a serpent on a rock, waiting for prey to come by. And she increased the transgressors among men. I mean, you think about your basic, shall we say, your basic sins that people commit. There are far more people who commit fornication, which is all these women fall under fornication. Whether it's the whore, the woman you're just fornicating with, or the adulteress. There's far more men who transgress from that than, say, murder, stealing. I mean, this is probably the number one area of transgression among men, is fornication. It increases. Men who wouldn't dream of murdering somebody or stealing from someone will transgress against God through fornication. And the end result is death and hell, which is why you must avoid her. Why Solomon, this is his final plea to you, to bring you to your senses. Look out, it's a trap, don't take the bait. And Solomon drives that home here in Ecclesiastes 7, chapter 7, verse 26. I find more bitter than death the woman whose heart's a snare and nets, her hands as bands. Whosoever pleases God shall escape from her, but the sinner shall be taken by her. Notice, more bitter than death. What's more bitter than death? Hell. Yeshua tarries long enough. Death will come to everyone who's not raptured. There's not everyone who's transformed in a moment of time, literally an atom of time in Greek. Everyone else is going to experience this, but more bitter. But death, however it comes, when it's over, it's over. The bitterness of it's gone, but the bitterness of hell continues on. And this woman is like that. Her heart is nothing but traps. Her hands are as bands. She wants to imprison you. She wants control of you at the end of the day. She doesn't want God controlling you. She wants to be in control. That's really what's driving the whole thing, where it's the contentious wife, even the contentious wife. And if a wife's contentious and angry, and you go out in the wilderness, she's probably going to throw a fit, and who knows what she's going to do? Maybe destroy her house some more, because she wants to be in charge and not you listening to God and doing what He says, which in this case, going to wilderness, showing He's in charge. So the only way to escape this woman, to escape this wrong types of women, is to do what pleases God. If you do what's pleasing to start with, you're not going to get involved with a prostitute. You're not going to get involved in fornication. You're not going to get involved in adultery. You are going to be engaged to your own wife. You are going to have sex with her. You're going to drink from that well as often as you want, and your spouse and your fountains are going to disperse till they have no more to disperse. If you want to please God with your wife and only your wife. And if your wife and you're going to listen from God, if you're wanting to please Him, and you're going to marry a woman that's not contentious in the first place. But if something happens, she starts being contentious, you're going to do what God says. You're going to move yourself out. You're going to move yourself off to the corner of the house, make that man cave and live in it, or go to it when you need to. Or you're going to, if you have to, if she's contentious and angry enough to protect your health and to protect and ultimately to protect her as well, so she don't destroy your health and your ability to take care of her, you're going to go out into the wilderness. And that's how you're going to escape her, is you're going to do those things God says if you please her. But if you're not going to do what God pleases God, notice that's the definition of a sinner here. Someone who's not doing what pleases God in the context here. You're not obeying His commands, not His commands of the Torah, not His commands, not the commands like these that He's given through Solomon. And you're going to be taken by her. You're going to end up. That woman that's continually complaining is going to wreck your health because you won't take action. That not action like, well, I got a gun and shot her. That'd be action. But the action God says you need to take, how to deal with her wisely, because you won't man up and act wisely towards her. You're going to be taken by her, or because you're not pleasing God, you're going to be taken in by the harlot. You're going to be taken in by those flattering words you were told to watch out for. You're going to be taken in by her settlement. You're going to be taken in by even her bold actions. And even her pleading after she takes bold action, that doesn't work on you. So, wisdom with women. Find women who God says have those good qualities. One woman, let Him tell you who to marry. I literally let God tell me who to marry. I went on one date in my life, asked my wife to marry me. She said yes. And we've been married 38 years. God knows how to pick them, okay? He knows what He's doing. He's giving me some guidelines, but you can also ask Him and involve Him, and avoid all other, and particularly look out for the trap, because it leads to death and hell. That's all I have for this week. And don't forget, these women who lead to death and hell, who are more better than death, are often in our own congregations. And I don't care if you meet on the Sabbath, you meet on some other day. I don't care how holy you think everyone in your congregation is. Once it gets of any size, these women are there. The tares are always among the wheat, the wheat are always in the field with the wheat until the harvest comes. Do not let her appearance of being holy, that woman that pays her vows, but has forsaken her covenant by not obeying these weightier commandments, even though she may be doing those lesser commandments, she may be wearing tzitzits or whatever the case is, but she's breaking these weightier commandments. Do not let her fool you. That's all I've got. Do not look on those surface things. Ask God who can see to the heart to show you a good woman to marry. That's all I've got for this week. Until next week, shalom.